Hello, guys. Good evening. Welcome back to Guard Your Heart Initiative, GYH 423. This evening, we're going to talk about the choice. The choice. And primarily, it is because I've come to realize that along the way, us as human beings, some of us make a choice daily. Some of us have made a choice long ago that we've stayed committed to, and it has impacted your life, my life, in more ways than we ever could imagine or realize. There is this focus right now in society to label everyone as a narcissist, label everyone as a sociopath or psychopath, or label this person as an influencer, whatever titles that everyone is trying to give to themselves or give to other people. And I think sometimes it just confuses the issues because you're constantly trying to figure out, like, is this person this? Is this person not this? And we get so caught up in trying to figure out who these people may or may not be, or do we fit this title, or do we fit in this box? And we overcomplicate the issue. So I've always veered towards trying to keep things as simple as possible. And I think that's why God has written the gospel and written the Bible as he has, because he wants to write it in such a simplistic way that any and everyone can understand it. So the choice practically stems from, in this instance, we'll talk about traumatic moments, because 9 out of 10 times, that's where we make a key decision in our life. Sometimes we don't even realize we've made that decision because we're so enveloped by the trauma and the circumstance that we're in, we haven't even realized it. But if I was supposed to make it personal to myself, I would go back to the moment where I made the choice to be a good person, to want good for my life, and to not do evil to others. And it was in one of the darkest moments where I probably should have chosen the opposite, or chosen to do the opposite. I didn't grow up with my parents. I grew up with relatives. And in those moments, sometimes it wasn't always pleasant. I mean, I won't go into the details at this stage. Maybe at some point, if I feel it's important, then I'll share it. But to put it in a nutshell, there were those dark days, those dark moments where I felt like, am I going to make it out of this situation? And I felt so wounded, because when people are meant to love you and they do the opposite, it is very heartbreaking. It is very damaging. But because of what I felt from the pain of what I was experiencing in those many moments, it was so horrendous and horrible and so heartbreaking. And I would sit and I would ponder. And one thing I chose to do in that moment, I said to myself, because of what I was feeling, I said, I never, ever want another person to feel this. I never want to ever be the person that ever makes anyone feel this way. And I made a choice in that moment, without even realizing it, that I had committed to live a life where I honor others, I respect others, I celebrate others, where I bring people joy, or I just try to do good. And from that moment on, believe me when I say, everything has tried to test my resolve and test my commitment to that decision. If I was supposed to look at it from a spiritual point of view, I would literally say, in that moment when I chose to not allow darkness to consume my heart and make me a bitter, angry, unforgiving person, I gave God permission. I gave God permission to be the loudest voice in my life. At that time, I didn't understand or know it was God talking to me, but I know there was this presence encouraging me, willing me to stay the course no matter what. And believe me when I say, everything that could come against and force me to do the opposite, but I'd made that decision and I never looked back. And I will never look back. And I feel like in that moment, a lot of us make the decision to say, what is being done to me, I'm going to give it out back to the world 10 times fold. And then we go from being a victim to then becoming a perpetrator. And then we show up in the world staining the lives of others and then giving them exactly what was given to us. And I do understand that temptation, and I do understand that decision was made from a place of deep hurt, of deep wounding. But you're in a different place now. Then you were powerless. Many of you in that situation, you were powerless. You had no voice. You probably had very limited options, especially if a lot of these things happen to you in childhood. A lot of these things happen to you in childhood, then it is just going to pervert the course of the way you think, the way you see the world. But if I can encourage you at this moment in time in your life, if you do recognize what I'm saying or do connect with what I'm saying, would you reconsider that decision? Would you choose differently? Would you choose a different course? Will you choose, I know you're not at the place to forgive, but if you could choose to say, I'm not going to become what was done to me, that is the most important step, because that will just allow you to have a more open heart. That will allow you to be more receptive to allowing love to come in, allowing healing to come in. But as long as you choose to harden your heart, to stay closed off, you won't ever be receptive to love, to anything. And that is the primary reason why you see so much hurt, so much hatred, so much venom being spewed out of individuals, and sometimes that very person. And that is because of decision that was made, possibly in a traumatic moment. So if you could rethink and go back to that moment, would you choose differently? And if you can't go back to that moment, obviously, will you choose this moment now to say, you know what, I changed my mind. I changed my mind. I've done a lot of damage on the way, and I didn't even fully understand why. But now that I do realize, I changed my mind, and I no longer want to harden my heart. I no longer want to pour out hurt because I was hurt. I no longer want to be unloving and unkind because that's what I experienced. And I feel like a lot of us who have been the victims of hardened heart individuals, it has been so devastating to our lives because we struggle to understand, even though we might have an explanation as to why, we still struggle to understand, like, why would this person ever want to do that, considering they understand intimately and firsthand what pain feels like, what that hurt feels like. Why would you ever want to pour that out onto another person? And 9 out of 10 times, it's just anger. It's just anger and feeling like, I did not deserve this, and you did not deserve that. And you fed that anger, and you continue to feed the anger. And whatever you feed and whatever you consume, that is what you're gonna project and meter out, not just onto yourself, but onto others. But you're doing yourself such a disservice when you choose to harden your heart. So when science and psychologists and all these individuals will label it as narcissism and psychopathy, psychopathy. Oh my goodness. Psychopathy. Then, yeah, it can be devastating. But I understand the pain. I understand how trauma will cause us to make snap decisions. But you owe it to yourself. And You owe it to the people that you love, or the people that are trying to love you, the people who are actually now wanting to do right by you. Allow yourself to be loved. And for those who've made the decisions to have a receptive heart, stay the course. Even though it's hard, even though you've gotten knocked back time and time again and it feels like it's not worth it, stay the course. Stay the course and keep choosing to have a open, receptive, soft heart. But in my next video, we'll discuss emotional intelligence of when you've made the decision to have a soft and receptive heart, how to actually live a life of balance, how to live a life of intelligence where you're not a victim to a person with a hardened heart, where you're not a victim to your emotions, where you're not a slave to your emotions, where you have enough of a balance where you are guarding your heart, you are protecting it, but you're protecting it in the most responsible, effective way. So I hope that sheds some light or give you some clarity